Hi, everyone. Welcome to the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. YIVO, if you are not yet familiar, is a special place for the contemplation and celebration of Jewish history and culture. So YIVO has a vast collection of archives and library books. And last year, we launched a new self-paced, take anytime free class that brought together experts and chefs and YIVO's archival materials, all about Jewish food. So if you haven't signed up for this class yet, I highly recommend that you register for A Seat at the Table, A Journey into Jewish Food. And one of the wonderful experts featured in that class, A Seat at the Table, is Leah Koenig, who is joining us today for a cooking demonstration on Roman Jewish cuisine. So Leah's writing and recipes have appeared in the New York Times, New York Magazine, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Food and Wine, Epicurious, Food 52, and Tablet, among other publications. She is a very busy author of 6 cookbooks, including the Jewish Cookbook and Modern Jewish Cooking. And in addition to writing, Leah also leads cooking demonstrations and workshops around the country, such as this one. And so during today's program, we invite you to ask any questions in the Q&A function. We'll try and get to recipe-related cooking questions during the demonstration, and then more general questions towards the end of the program. And I'll also note that today's program is being recorded and will be on YIVO's YouTube channel, so you'll be able to rewatch it in case you don't have the ingredients ready at the moment, or if you want to make the food again, or if you'd like to share it with your friends. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Leah.
Great. Well, thank you, Jane and Alex. And yeah, so I'm Leah Koenig. I've done several different events with YIVO in the last couple of years. And as Jane mentioned, I had the pleasure and honor of being a part of their A Seat at the Table course. I'm sure lots of people here have already registered for that and done some of it, but if you haven't, I highly, highly recommend it. It was really, really thoughtfully put together, an absolute joy to be a part of, and I think is a really both deep and broad look at the world of Jewish cuisine. So I highly recommend that. And today, you might be wondering why I'm not in a kitchen. We're about to be, but the kitchen is not the best place to do the first part of my talk, which I actually want to give a little bit of history just for 5 or 10 minutes to kind of situate you in the world of the Roman Jewish world. So I figured we'd start here and then I'll walk you over to the kitchen. So as Jane mentioned, I have written several cookbooks about Jewish food, and for the last 15 years or so have been writing almost exclusively about Jewish cuisine. And I really take a global approach to Jewish cuisine because that's what Jewish food is. You know, I grew up eating the Ashkenazi staples, you know, with maybe the occasional hummus or, you know, something Sephardic kind of thrown in there, but my work is to really complexify and deepen people's understanding that Jewish food is really, really, really and truly global. Jews have lived and cooked almost everywhere in the world and have traveled and brought foods with them, and those foods have changed, and they've shared the foods of their neighbors and adapted them for kashrut, and over the many, 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 many generations have really created something very, very special. So the book we're cooking out of today is my most recent book, the Jewish Cookbook. This is a really well-worn copy at this point, so it doesn't usually look this grubby. But we're going to be making a dish that comes from Rome's Jewish community. I'm actually working on a book. My next book is going to be focused on Rome's Jewish cuisine, so it's going to be a deep dive into it. But this book has a few recipes, maybe 5 or 6 of the 400 and whatever that are in here are focused on Rome. And, you know, I'm not Roman. My family's background is Russian, Lithuanian on my mom's side, and German, not Jewish on my dad's side. So I'm pretty much a Ashkenazi / Central European background. But, you know, of all the places I've traveled for work or for pleasure or life, you know, Rome has captivated me, as I'm sure many people on here have felt similarly captivated by Rome. And more importantly, Rome really was, visiting Rome has been one of the more kind of enlightening or watershed moments of my career where I really realized the depth and breadth of Jewish cuisine, that it wasn't just Ashkenazi cuisine. It wasn't just Ashkenazi and Sephardi. It wasn't just Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Middle Eastern or Mizrahi, but there were these communities that either predated those things or developed independently. And Rome's community is one of the communities that predates Ashkenazi, even the development of Ashkenazi or Sephardi cuisine. So I want to start with just about 5 minutes, a few photos of the history, and we will then get cooking, I promise. So let me go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I'm sure lots of people here have been to Rome. Many of you have probably been to the Rome's Jewish quarter, the Jewish ghetto neighborhood. So some of this will feel familiar. But so just by way of quick introduction, Jews have lived in Rome since the 2nd century BCE, so over 2,000 years. It's a very ancient community. And throughout history, there have been sort of different waves of Jewish populations who have arrived. The first Jews, many of them came as slaves, unfortunately. Kind of the earliest Jews in Rome, where many of them were slaves. But people who can kind of trace their lineage back really, really far are called Italkim. So these are kind of the original Roman Jews, and there are still Jews today in Rome who can trace their lineage back, if not 2,000 years, at least, pretty far. And then after the Spanish Inquisition in the 15th, 16th century, a group of Sephardi Jews came to Rome. And so they were coming from Spain and Portugal when they were basically either kicked out or forced to convert or face death. Many of them moved to all sorts of places. One of the places was Rome. And because Italy at that time was not a unified country that it is today, it was different kind of little, nation states or entities. The south part of Italy, which had a large Jewish population, so Sicily and the southern portion, was actually ruled by Spain at that point. So when the Inquisition happened, a lot of Jews who were already living in the south of Italy had to move also, because if it was ruled by Spain, the same rules applied with the Inquisition. So that was this kind of second influx of Sephardi Jews to Rome, and those Jews kind of overlapped on top of the Italkim. And then the third group is a more recent group. So in the 1960s and 70s, several thousand Libyan Jews who lived and their community was in Libya, moved to Rome as the kind of Middle East became less safe for Jews to live. And because Italy and Libya were connected, and many of them spoke Italian or had family members who spoke Italian, there ended up being a Libyan group there. And now, that's 50, 60 years ago. So that group has now kind of joined what I consider to be like the larger fabric of Jewish community in Rome. Today, there's about, the numbers are, people say different things. I've heard everything from 13,000 to 15 or 16,000 Jews living in Rome. So it's not a huge community, but it's a very tight-knit community and a very active one. And really, the heart of it is the ghetto neighborhood. And so just to tell you a little bit about the ghetto, this is all very, very fast history. And I'm going to tell you someone who can tell you more about it in a second. But in the 1550s, 1555, the Pope decreed that Jews had to live in this specific chunk of Rome. And so it's this little yellow section on the map that you see here. And this was, there were other ghettos. Venice had the first ghetto in Italy, where Jews were basically constrained to live in this one specific part. And it was very dark, very cramped. I mean, imagine some of the worst tenement conditions you can possibly imagine. It was very poor. The river that you see, the Tiber River on the side, flooded several times a year. So, couple times a year you would have flooding conditions. It was just really, really not a lovely place to live at the time. It was very, very hard. And that situation lasted more than 300 years. It basically lasted until the unification of Italy in the 1870 or 71. I'm forgetting which date. So for more than 300 years, the Jews of Rome lived in this very, very small area. And they, their rights were limited in lots of different ways. And one of them was some culinary ways. They were not allowed to buy certain cuts of meat that were considered like the premium cuts of meat. They were not allowed to buy larger fish. There was a fish market in the ghetto, and there was this marble slab that was like a measuring slab. And if you put the fish on it and the head and the tail kind of fell off of either side or flopped off either side of the slab, Jews were not allowed to buy it. It was considered too big. So you'll find there's a lot of small fish, anchovies, sardines, things like that in Roman Jewish cuisine. And the joke's on the people who were trying to hold them down, because those are some of the most nutritious omega fatty acid filled fish. So Jews were actually eating well, even though they were supposedly eating not so well. And Jews were also restricted from a lot of jobs while living in the ghetto. One of the things they could do was to sell fried foods, like in push carts. So there were a lot of people who sold fried vegetables, fried fish, and that's another dish that you see a lot. And you see deep fried everything, because olive oil, now we think of olive oil as this kind of more premium ingredient, at least in the States, but in Italy, where it was abundant, it was actually a very economical way to cook food. So I'm not going to go into too much more history, but I wanted to show you this picture on the right. This is after ghetto times. This is probably looking at the cars, the 1940s or 50s, maybe. But you can still kind of see the poverty that people, and the kind of crumbling conditions that people lived in the ghetto. All right, so that is kind of a bit of the history. Today, as with the Lower East Side in Manhattan, as with the Marais district in France, as with Budapest's Jewish quarter, the place that was sort of considered the Jewish part of town and also not a desirable part of town has become very trendy, very fancy, a very hot real estate. And that is true of the Roman ghetto as well. If you are someone who's lucky enough to have had family own an apartment for generations, you are sitting on some very expensive real estate at this point. So on the bottom, you'll see this is kind of the main drag of the Jewish ghetto neighborhood. And, Jews now live all sorts of places in Rome, but the main Jewish school is in the ghetto. The main synagogue, which you see on the right, is in the ghetto neighborhood. Many shops and restaurants that obviously during non-COVID times tourists go to, but also Romans and Roman Jews go to, are in the ghetto. So it still very much serves as a central home, even though people live more spread out. And I love this group of Italian Roman Jewish grandmothers sitting on the bench. They are just absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to go to the next page. So Jane, if you can see if Michaela is on this group, that would be awesome. I want to bring her on for a second. So before we do, I just want to introduce you to a couple of people. So you can see me in the middle picture with my husband. I had very short hair at the time, it's longer now. This was a trip that we took 10 years ago or so when we were first married. I think that's actually more like 12 or 13 years ago since we were first married. And it was very much a trip for me where I fell in love with Rome and Rome's Jewish food. On the bottom right, you see the women who own Boccioni, which is an old kind of 200-year-old or more kosher bakery that has existed in Rome for a long time. I mean, for many hundreds of years at this point, and has been owned by the same family. They are known by everybody. People go there to get their cookies and cakes and this ricotta crostata pie that they make. But in front of them is one of the most famous dishes, which is an Italian Roman Jewish bar cookie called pizza Ebraica, which literally means Jewish style pizza, but it's not a savory pizza. It's a sweet bar cookie that has pine nuts and raisins and candied citron, and it's unlike anything I've ever had before. It's one of my favorite treats of the ghetto. And then on the left, there's a picture of a wonderful person named Micaela Pavoncello. She is a Roman Jew, and she is somebody who leads tours of the Roman Jewish neighborhood and the ghetto, and also the synagogue. And she's one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about Roman Jewish cuisine. And so, is she on, Jane?
I don't see her. No.
Okay, all right. So she wasn't sure if she could make it because of picking up her kids at school and everything, but she leads tours during non-COVID times in person, but she also leads virtual tours. And from what I've heard, they are incredible. So I actually put her email there and her Instagram. So you should definitely follow her, reach out to her if you want to do like a really fun, like traveling to Rome from the comfort of your own home. She is hilarious and super knowledgeable. So I just want to put a plug in for her. And the last thing I wanted to introduce you to, I promise we'll get cooking very soon. The shorter man and woman who are standing next to me and my husband, who look like giants. My husband is 6'4", so he is kind of a giant, but that is Giovanni Terracina and Yael. He is the one of the kind of head kosher caterers in Rome. And we were lucky enough to have a Shabbat dinner at his house when we were traveling there. And I like to tell this story. I was a vegetarian at the time. I was vegetarian for 10 years. And we got to his house, and he had this beautiful table set in his apartment and wine. And we get to the table, and it was literally one small plate of polenta and then like an entire table covered with meat dishes. There were like chicken and celery stews and all sorts of things. This wonderful dish called stracotto, which is like the Roman Jewish pot roast made with red wine and tomato sauce. And I looked at my husband and I said, if the phrase "when in Rome" ever applies, it applies tonight. And I just ate everything, and I didn't worry about it. And let's just say I wasn't a vegetarian for too much longer after that meal. So the very last thing I wanted to share is some of the main dishes. So on the bottom right is the stracotto I just mentioned. It's the succulent beef. They often use shin meat, but you can really use any type of stew meat that you like, cooked with tomatoes and wine. And sometimes people add carrots or potatoes to kind of make it more of a meal. It's delicious. On the bottom left, you'll see the pizza Ebraica, a close-up, which is the bar cookie from Boccioni that I mentioned before. It is tender on the outside and like almost kind of chewy, almost underbaked on the inside, but in a good way. And the top you'll see is burnt. That is actually something that Boccioni is known for. They kind of char a lot of their things. Their ovens are very hot and very old, but it's kind of part of the charm of eating there, and somehow it still tastes good. In the center, you'll see Carciofi A La Giulia. This is the most famous dish of Rome's Jewish ghetto. And it is basically it's a twice deep fried artichoke that is tender in the center, super crisp on the outside. It's one of the most heavenly things I've ever eaten. It's a pain in the butt to make, but when you go to Rome, any restaurant that has Roman Jewish cuisine will have them, and they're spectacular. And then on the top left is going to be a variation of the dish that we're making today, which is concia. It's a marinated zucchini dish. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the food of the Roman Jewish ghetto is so exciting to me because it is so ancient, but it also has these layers of history of the Italkim and the Sephardim, and now there's Libyan food traditions that have been introduced. So you'll go to someone's house and they'll have stracotto with couscous, right? Like there's blending that's happening. That's very, very exciting. And you see things like raisins and pine nuts and everything, and small fish and frying food, and just a way of coaxing deliciousness out of very, very simple ingredients. Often to an American palate, you might sometimes say, oh, there's not enough ingredients in this dish to make it good, but it's the care and the skill and the love that goes into it that makes the food really spectacular. Okay, so I'm gonna move you with me to the kitchen, and we are gonna get started on the version of concia. Hold on just 1 second and get you situated here. So let me stop sharing. And I will say, if you have any questions about what I just said, or anything you want to add in the comments, feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and we will get to that at the end of the demo. Okay. And actually, Jane, if you could keep an eye out, and if Michaela hops on, just let me know, and we'll have her jump on and say hello. Okay, so the dish that we're making today, again, sorry, it's kind of hard to find that happy medium between seeing the ingredients and cutting off the top of my head. It's called concia. It is a fried and marinated zucchini dish. It's a very kind of summery dish. So we're a little bit early of when we would be making it, but in the next couple months, as zucchinis become, in season, is when you would normally see people make it. And the type of zucchini that I'm using here is, an American style zucchini. It's not the type that's used in Rome. There's a zucchini, like a Romanesca, Roman version zucchini that you've probably seen at farmers markets. It has ridges. It's a lighter green and it has ridges, and it's a little bit less watery. So it's actually like a really good zucchini for this dish. But I have found I've made it with these, when I can't find them, and it works just fine. It's not quite as authentic, but it more than does the trick. It's very delicious. So what we want to start with, actually, let me get these knives out of the way. Pop it on the floor. So what we want to do is start by frying our zucchini. This is the part that takes a little while. So I'm actually going to use 2 different frying pans. If you are cooking at home, you can absolutely use just one, but I might as well speed things up if I can. So I'm going to set these both over medium heat and just let them heat up for a second while I finish prepping everything, and then we'll get going. You want to put about 1/3 cup-ish into each of the pans that you're using to fry. So this is not a deep frying situation the way it is with the artichokes. It's kind of like somewhere between a shallow fry and a deep fry. But you want it to be enough that you're going to get a nice kind of golden sear. So I say approximately 1/3 cup, although it obviously depends on the size of your pan. And we're going to let that heat up. You can add a little more as you go. So right now I'm doing research into the Roman Jewish world, and I've been talking to a lot of people there over Zoom and on the phone while I can't get there, although hopefully I'll be able to get there later this fall. And many of them have said something along the lines of olive oil is where our joy comes from, or there's no such thing as Roman Jewish cuisine without too much olive oil. So you don't want to be shy, and you want to use a nice quality olive oil. When I am deep frying something, I would not recommend using olive oil because it has a lower smoke point, which means when it gets hot, it starts to actually smoke and put off acrid fumes, which you do not obviously want. So when I'm deep frying, I use a neutral oil, like sunflower oil is really good. People like canola. It's not my favorite, but you can use canola, safflower, anything like that. But for this, since we're not deep frying, we're kind of almost doing like a shallow saute. We can use our extra virgin olive oil. So I am cutting my zucchini into planks. They're about 1/4 inch thick, as you can see here. And different people who make this dish will cut their zucchini differently. Some people will do coins, like circles, and some people do planks. That's really up to you. Everyone you talk to will tell you that the way that they do it is the correct way. So that is full license for you to decide which way you like to do it the best. And if you are cooking along at home and you haven't cut most of your zucchini like I have already, just go ahead and do it now. You'll be able to catch up because we're going to basically be frying and doing that for a little while. And I usually discard or compost or find another use for the ends, which is probably not the most thrifty. I usually like chop them up and add them to something else. But I find that they don't kind of work as well as the middle parts. They don't take on the color or the oil as well because it doesn't penetrate the skin. So I don't usually put them in my concia. Okay. And so we're ending up with a plate of zucchini planks like this. And I'm going to test my oil. This oven is, this stovetop is pretty quick. I see that it is already taking on, here, I'll bring you over. It's already bubbling. That's what you want to see, active bubbling. You don't want to singe or burn them, but you want them to take on a nice golden color. So I'm just going to put a layer in here. And you want them to soak up a lot of oil. I know that's kind of counterintuitive to maybe what a lot of Americans do with cooking, but you are not going to add any more oil to the, this one's not as hot. We're not going to be adding any more oil to the dish aside from what the zucchini are soaking up. So we want them to kind of get as much of it as they can while they're cooking. So funny how different burners and different pans conduct heat differently. It makes my demos more challenging. But while we were frying our zucchini, actually, Jana will say, did any questions related to the recipe come up before I carry on?
Yeah, we do have a question from someone wondering if it would be possible to do this recipe roasted, and also a question about peeling, which you sort of answered.
Yeah, no, you don't want to peel them. The skin is very, very tender, and when it kind of adds a nice color, and you don't notice anything texture-wise. You could roast your zucchini. I don't think I would call it concia anymore because frying is sort of the point of it. But you could roast it, and I would use maybe more oil than you would normally do, and marinate it. It would be a slightly different dish, but it would still be delicious. And it would certainly be less, time consuming. Although honestly, it goes pretty quickly if you're using 2 pans. Anything else, or should I keep going?
Oh, you can keep going.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I've got my zucchinis going. I'm going to basically want them to get really nice and golden brown on either side. And in the meantime, I'm going to prep my my herbs. So I have here fresh basil, which I've rinsed really well, actually soaked and drained a couple times because you definitely don't want to have any sand or grit or you're going to ruin the whole dish. And basil tends to be very gritty. And I also have some fresh mint here. You can use parsley if you prefer, for some or all of it, but I really, really like the mixture of mint and basil. And in Rome, there's actually a special type of mint that grows that I'm not sure if we can get in the States, but regular mint that we find here works as well, but it's really kind of special when you go there and you try something that is, familiar but different because of local agriculture. And my book and the recipe that you have has measurements. I think it's about a 1/4 cup of each of the herbs. But honestly, this dish is something you can kind of do by taste. If you like, less garlic, you can do less garlic. If you like, more of a certain type of herb, you can kind of play around. I'm going to just chop a bunch of herbs and then kind of sprinkle as I go. So I'm just pulling the mint and basil leaves off of their stems, and I'm going to just put them in one big pile so I can chop them together. And meanwhile, I'm going to keep an eye on my zucchini. And so one of the women that I spoke with recently for the book I'm working on now said that she really likes to kind of keep concia in her fridge kind of at all times during the summer. And it's a very refreshing side dish to have, but it's also like a really good sandwich topper. You know, if you're having like some kind of sandwich, just to throw some of the concia on at the end, or it can be good with just a simple pasta. So there's lots of different ways that you can serve and eat this. I often just like eat the whole bowl when I'm done because it's so delicious. So I'm just keeping an eye on my zucchini. They're not quite taking on color yet, so I'm going to let them keep going. And then
we have two herb questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So someone wants to know if dried herbs can be used instead of fresh, and someone else wants to know for the mint if it should be peppermint or spearmint.
Oh, good questions. So I love dried herbs for lots of things, for soups, for things where they kind of can cook for a little bit. In this dish, I would not use dried herbs. Fresh is really kind of the only way to go, because the whole point is that they kind of add brightness to the dish. So I would definitely use fresh for this recipe. And if you're worried about having too many herbs left over, what I like to do is I just like kind of tear the leaves and put them into salads, almost like a separate leaf. And it adds a lot of flavor to a fresh salad, so you don't have to worry about wasting. And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
Peppermint or spearmint, or the special kind of Roman mint.
I don't actually know which one this is. I think it's closer to spearmint smelling than peppermint, but really, like, I feel like any mint that you like would work well in this dish. So if you have a favorite between those two, it would be, I would go with that one. I don't know that it actually matters specifically. Oops. All right, so I'm just flipping these and really wishing that I was wearing an apron. If you have a splatter guard, it's a good time to use one. I will show you what these look like in a second, but I'm just turning them so they can get color on both sides. So let me take you over here. You can see they're starting to take on some color. They could go even a little bit darker. And as the batches go on, they will brown more quickly, since that's kind of how frying works. You can obviously, if they're burning or like browning too quickly, you can also turn down the heat a little bit and nudge up and down as needed. But yeah, if you have a splatter guard, which I don't, I really should get one for all the frying that I do for various things. It's a good time to use one. All right, let me get these flipped, and then we'll chop some herbs while they cook on the other side. So basically, you just want, God, it smells like a garden in here. You just want to give them a very, very kind of good solid chop. I like to just kind of keep piling them back in the center. And if you get onto the floor, you can pick them up in a second. That's what I do. That's what Julia Child always did when she dropped things during her television show. Give them a nice chop. And different people will tell you to use like sort of different ratios. You know, some people like it more herb heavy, some people like only just a little bit. I tend to like more. The other thing I forgot to mention is that lots of traditional recipes for concia salt the zucchini first as a way of drawing out some of the excess water. I often do that, but I have also found that the times where I don't do it, it doesn't make a huge difference. It'll still splatter even if you have salted your zucchini. And I actually personally like being able to salt as I go with the dish, and find that it becomes it's less salty that way. So if you're somebody who likes to pre-salt zucchini, more power to you. You can absolutely do that. And it's actually probably the more traditional way to do it. But I tend to just kind of salt the dish as I go and just fry the points unsalted. Okay, so I have my herbs nice and chopped. And let me take a peek at my zucchini. So this first batch is looking pretty ready to go on this side. So what I'm going to do is I have a slotted spatula, like a fish spatula, You could also use tongs to turn and rotate them. And I'm just going to put a layer of them at the bottom of a shallow baking dish. It can be ceramic or glass, Pyrex. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using a metal one because it kind of, you're going to add vinegar and it's going to sit for a while, so it could kind of impact the flavor in a way, but any sort of like glass or metal dish, I'm sorry, glass or ceramic dish is fine. The shape doesn't really matter, but you want it to be on the shallow side. And I'm not doing a lot of work to let these drip because I actually want the oil that's in them to be a part of what will become the dressing that you'll see in a minute. Okay, so this is my first layer of zucchini. And as you can see, it's golden brown. So I'm going to put my second layer in and I'm going to show you what we do next. A lot of the dishes that I'm encountering as I'm doing research for this book are just really, really, really like the epitome of simple. I mean, it's just like oil, salt, pepper, maybe some lemon zest, some garlic, some chili flakes, but it's not super complicated dishes, but somehow there's this alchemy that happens and the dish ends up being just as full flavored as if you were using all of these other spices. I'm not sure how that happens, but it seems to. Okay, so I have here the zucchini and I have my herbs. So the last thing that I need is, I think the recipe calls for 3 garlic cloves. I have a giant garlic clove and a regular garlic clove, so I'm going to count that as 3. And just like I did with my herbs, I'm going to chop the garlic. So I'm just going to give it a little smash to take the peel off easily. I'm sure many of you know that trick already. If you don't, it's the easiest way to get your peel off is to put your knife flat, give it a bang with your hand, and it should pop right off. And I'm just going to give my garlic a good chop. Now, I know different people have different garlic sensitivities, and this is raw garlic. So it will be, sorry, you're like looking at my hands only. It will get mellowed out by the vinegar. So you don't have to worry too much, but you can adjust up or down the amount of garlic. If you're somebody who loves garlic, you can do 4 cloves. If you don't love it so much, you can do 1 or 2, but it really is kind of an important part of the dish. But you want to get it nice and small so you're getting just little bits of it and not giant chunks. Okay, and so here's how we're going to put this dish together. So I have here red wine vinegar. I have my herbs and my garlic, and then I have some salt and pepper. And what we're going to do is we're almost going to layer it like lasagna. So we have our zucchini down. I'm going to put about half of the herbs and half of the garlic over top. And then I believe my recipe says 1/3 of a cup or 1/4 of a cup. I can't actually remember. I'm going to do 1/4 of a cup and then I'll taste of vinegar. But you don't want to put it in all at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of it, drizzle it over the top like this. And then I'm going to do a little bit of salt. The recipe tells you amounts in better than I'm doing right now. Oh, this pepper is out. Oh no, I'm going to have to use this stuff, which I don't normally recommend for a dish like this when every ingredient matters. You can certainly use it, but freshly ground just has more vibrancy to it. But this won't hurt anything. Just a little bit of pepper. I test my recipes very, very carefully. And so when I mention an amount in the recipe, I've tested it that way and decided that it's the right amount. But when I'm just cooking at home, like many of you, I kind of taste as I go. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing today. But you should have the recipe, and those amounts should hopefully not steer you the wrong way.
We have a few garlic questions if you want to hear them.
Sure.
Okay, so some folks are wondering if you can use minced garlic from a jar, perhaps pressing the garlic, perhaps even just using the garlic cloves just to get the flavor in the oil and then removing the cloves, I presume. And also a question about if you can use other kinds of vinegar.
Other kinds of vinegar. Okay. Okay, so for garlic, it's kind of similar to my response to the fresh herbs. I personally don't love the flavor of the jarred garlic. I find that it has lost a lot of its kind of vibrancy. It often tastes more like the citric acid that's like in the jar to preserve it than the garlic. So there is a product, I think by Koenig, or I don't remember, but it's a frozen garlic that's chopped and just frozen with no other additives. So if people are looking for like a garlic shortcut, which I totally understand, that's what I would suggest. But for this recipe, fresh is really like, there's so few ingredients that you really want to focus on the fresh. And, you know, I'm not like a snob about fresh ingredients in general. I use canned beans and I use, you know, things like that. But things like lemon juice and garlic, that's where the flavor of the dish is coming from. So you really, I feel, you want to privilege the freshness, you know, over that. And as for using a whole garlic clove, you could, again, if you don't like garlic, I think I would rather say use 1 clove or half a clove and chop it up. If you have a press, you can totally press it. If you have like a microplane grater, you can grate it. That might be faster and easier than chopping it. So there are ways to make it less labor intensive, but yeah, you definitely want to go for fresh. And as for different types of vinegar, yes, I'm sure that white wine vinegar would work just as well. You probably could use, well, you could use apple cider. It would change the taste of the dish. It would be more acidic. I like red wine vinegar because it's kind of mellow and has like a sweetness to it. A sherry vinegar would work. I wouldn't use a plain distilled white vinegar necessarily. I feel like that would be too harsh. So you could play around. I don't think I would use balsamic either. It would probably taste okay, but it would really change the nature of the dish. But what I would really say is you should now let your zucchini burn, which is what I'm about to do. I'm just gonna go ahead and put my second layer on here. But you should really play around with what flavors you like. And if you like a certain type of vinegar better and you want to add it, that's totally fine. All right, so I got my second layer. These ones browned, I think I'm not imagining it, they browned quite a bit faster because my oil is better heated up this go around. And I'm going to plop them all in here, and then I just have one more layer. You can see it actually doesn't take that long to fry them when you are using 2 pans. So I'm going to turn off one of the heats and use my more active pan here to get my last few going. And so just like I did before, let's see, you can see kind of top down here. Don't look at my sink, which has my other stuff going on. I'm going to put more of the herbs. The smell is kind of out of control. It's incredibly delicious. More of the garlic, a little more of the vinegar. And it might feel weird that you're not adding more olive oil, but there's so much oil going on in the zucchini already that you really don't need it. And I will tell you one exception to that in a second. A little more salt and a little more of my pepper here. And we're just gonna let that sit. So some people make, especially in Rome, some people will make large batches of concia because they want to have it around, like, you know, for sandwiches or whatever, and they want to kind of preserve it. So if you're gonna do that, what you can do is you can pack your concia in something like this, obviously a bigger one, and you can add a little extra oil to kind of preserve it, and you know, store it in the fridge, and it will last for several weeks that way, and maybe 2 weeks, and it will continue to marinate almost like a pickle does, and get more and more flavorful. Obviously, some people like it a little fresher, some people like it a little more aged, like a fine wine, so that's up to you. but I like to basically like make it and serve it that same day. So I don't usually add a lot more oil, but if you were gonna kind of preserve it a little bit longer, I would add extra oil. So as you can see, hopefully, there is juice kind of at the, bottom and sides of the pan. And that is the oil from the zucchini, fried zucchini, kind of mixing with the red wine vinegar. And right now your garlic is pretty powerful and potent. And so what I like to do is I like to let this sit at least for half an hour, ideally longer, can be up for a couple of hours. So it's actually a good make-ahead dish. It's even a good day in advance dish because it really does just get more flavorful over time. But if I'm going to be serving it in a couple of hours, I'll just spoon some of the juice over the top and kind of let it marinate for a little bit, and that will soften the garlic flavor. I know some people are probably looking at the amount of garlic that I put in and crying because it's too much for them, and that's totally fine. I'm a garlic person, but you can absolutely, like I said, use less garlic if you prefer. All right, I'm gonna flip my last ones. Any more questions that came up, Jane?
Yeah, a few more questions. Some folks are curious if you could use fresh lemon juice instead of vinegar. And there's also some questions to clarify the name of the mint you were referring to, the Roman variety.
Totally. Yes, to using lemon juice, fresh lemon juice. I feel like I should have mentioned that before as a vinegar substitute. That actually probably would be better than trying a different type of vinegar because I feel like the lemon juice would be closer in flavor. And I don't remember off the top of my head. I have to go to my notes the name of the mint, but I know it's like a Roman mint. I can look for it and send it out later, but I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
Sounds good. Another question is when you're mentioning that it's sitting out and marinating, should that be on a countertop or should that be in the refrigerator?
Good question. So if you're going to serve it in the next couple of hours, I would just maybe cover it with either a dish towel or plastic wrap or whatever, just to, keep it cleanish and let it just sit at room temperature. If you're going to serve it tomorrow for a picnic, if you're making it Friday for like Shabbat lunch or Saturday lunch, you can put it in the fridge overnight and then maybe just bring it out to kind of bring it back to room temperature. Although honestly, I would eat it cold from the fridge as well. It's really good anyway.
Sure. And you mentioned that to store it, it's good to put it in a glass jar, add a little more oil, and keep it in the refrigerator. Someone also asked if it's possible to freeze the dish or if it wouldn't keep its integrity that way.
Yeah, I don't think I would freeze this particular dish. Yeah, I think it would lose its vibrancy if you did that. There are lots of good Roman dishes that you could freeze, but this one I would not. All right, so I have here my last one. Oh, I see Michaela joined. Let's have her join for a second. So while she's getting brought on, just as a reminder to everybody, so Michaela is a tour guide in Rome. She specializes in the Roman Jewish ghetto and the Jewish community. And she is one of the most knowledgeable, one of the most gracious, and one of the just loveliest people I've ever met. And I want to introduce you to her in person. Hi, Michaela.
Ciao, Leah. I'm so sorry. I'm late.
No.
How are you? Let me see the concia.
Uh-oh. Here. Do you do it like long or do you do the coins?
Long.
Okay, me too.
Good.
So this is how
perfect. So
yeah.
beautiful.
I
can smell it.
I know it smells so good. But I wanted you to just can we make her I don't know if she's on speak. There you are. Can you want to just say hello to everyone and say what you do really quick?
Of course. Thank you for giving me this chance. It's always beautiful to see you cooking our recipes. I'm passionate about the Roman Jewish culture and cuisine, and we met quite a few years ago, and we fell in love with each other because she's passionate about cooking. I'm passionate about the history of my community, and she really understood what it's all about. Poor ingredients with a lot of love, a lot of intentions to give to the children and to the table and to the holidays the right kavod. So out of very poor ingredients, we make amazing things. And I don't know if you told them about how poor is the Jewish cuisine in Rome, as every Jewish cuisine in the world. And it is so... Sorry, that's my child. And it's so funny that people today, the VIP who frequent the area that's very trendy and gentrified, they all come to eat very poor recipes like brain fried with artichokes or tongue or cheeks. So sorry. Bye. Sorry, it's impossible.
No, this is the world. The world.
So anyway, what I want you guys to know is that we look forward to see you all in Rome, to visit Jewish Rome, to visit the great synagogue, to visit the ghetto area, the ex-ghetto area, and to enjoy these dishes after you've tried to do them at home.
And I will say, in the meantime, Michaela is doing some Zoom tours. And so you should definitely contact her. You will not regret it. She is, as you can tell, charming and amazing and hilarious and very knowledgeable. So I think Alex just dropped her website into the chat. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
She also knows absolutely everybody in the neighborhood. She knows all the restaurant owners and all the people. So you can get some, kind of maybe little backstage passes to certain
But
things.
there's no way, Leah, to get the recipes from the Jewish bakery. Only you could do that. A very good spy. For me, it's impossible. Whenever I try to ask, but what is exactly inside the Jewish pizza? They laugh at me.
Yeah.
So you were very good at getting their secrets.
No, I'm reverse engineering from what I taste. There's no way I'll ever know. But then that means you have to go there and try it yourself. But anyway, yes. Michaela, it's so lovely. Thank you for jumping on. And I really, I know there's 500 people here. I didn't even realize that. That's amazing.
Wow.
All of you should.
If I knew, I would put some makeup.
All of you should go and do a tour with her, either in person when you can or a Zoom.
Oh, here John saying that you just did Zoom with me. Oh, that's so nice. Well, I look forward to see you all. Come back soon, Leah. I'll wait for you in Rome. We go out and hang out a bit together.
I can't wait. Ciao.
Grazie. Grazie a tutti. Ciao.
Ciao. Wow, that's the benefit of doing a Zoom demo instead of doing things in person, is you can literally have people from all over the world. And yeah, anyways, so the concia is pretty much ready to go. And I know we're kind of getting to the end of our demo. So Jane, if there were other questions that came up either about Rome or about, my work or anything, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, well, in terms about this recipe in particular, we had some folks interested to know if you could make this recipe with other vegetables, perhaps eggplants. I'm not sure if that would just taste good or if that could still be called concia. And also attendees wanted to know where the name comes from.
Ooh, I don't know if Michaela's still on. I have not been able to find the origin of the name concia yet. When I go there, I'm going to try to figure that out. But she may have popped off because of kids and whatever. But that I will hopefully know that by the time the next book comes out. It is a rather ancient dish, so it could be that it's kind of not lost to history, but a little more murky. I have seen a few variations of concia, including some eggplant, but it's not very common. And there are other kind of like fried eggplant dishes in Roman Jewish cuisine, but concia tends to be just zucchini. But that doesn't mean you couldn't try it with eggplant. I bet it would be delicious to fry and marinate eggplant.
And then one of our attendees, Jeremy, asked perhaps one of the big questions, which is, what about this dish makes it Jewish?
That's the question for all Jewish dishes, right? So Jewish food is hard to describe and hard to define because unlike, Chinese cuisine or French cuisine or wherever, there aren't geographical borders to Jewish food. And so many Jewish dishes are what I call Jewish right? They're Jewish, but they also, belong to another place. One of my favorite examples is borscht, right? We think of beet borscht as being Jewish here in the States because Jews brought it to the United States, and you find it in every Jewish delicatessen. But if you go to Ukraine and you say, oh, borscht, that wonderful Jewish dish, they would look at you like you were crazy. And they would say borscht is not a Jewish dish, borscht is Ukrainian. So it can be hard to define a Jewish dish. So my definition is Jewish food is anything that has over time taken on cultural, religious, symbolic, familial resonance and meaning to the Jewish community. So it's dishes that are served on Shabbat, or dishes that are served for a holiday, or dishes that are meaningful to the Jewish community of a particular place. So this dish is indicative of Roman style Jewish cuisine, and that it's made with olive oil. Again, frying in olive oil was something that was really done by mostly by Jews back in the ghetto time, or at least mostly, a lot of the fried dishes that are popular now in Rome came from the Jewish community originally. So it's Jewish because it's meaningful to the Jewish community there, and it's eaten by the Jewish community there, and it's obviously kosher and all of that. So I hope that was kind of the long answer. Wait, I think, did Michaela give an answer too? She said something. Oh, she said concia is a word that comes from the shmata business. So like the clothing business, which Jews were obviously a part of, and dyeing the fabrics. And since you dry it in the sun, right. Okay, so that's very, very interesting. So concia, if you make it the really old fashioned way, you would lay your zucchini out to dry for like up to 24 hours and really, really dry it out. Again, when you're making it fresh like this, you don't necessarily need to do that, but that's really, really fascinating. Thank you, Michaela, for again being my my knowledge source for all of this.
And another question is, people are interested to hear what this is good to eat with, if it should be a side dish. You mentioned before that it can be a good topping for sandwiches, but perhaps there's any traditional pairings.
Yeah, it is a wonderful, very fresh, I would say it's somewhere between a salad and a side dish, and an appetizer. It can kind of serve all of those functions. Again, one of the women I spoke with for researching the book serves it just with, on top of pasta or on a sandwich. It's like a good ciabatta bread and cheese, and concia is an amazing sandwich, but I like to serve it with grilled meat or with fish. It really is a very versatile dish. You could put it on top of pizza even. Like if you have pizza, you could have it on the side or on top. It's like a condiment almost. So it's very, very versatile.
And then maybe as a final question, I know we have a lot of questions in the chat and everything, but perhaps some of these will be answered just by folks getting the recipe, cooking it yourself a few times, and doing some trial and error. But it seems like people are really interested, Leah, to read your book when it is coming out. So maybe if you could let us know when your plan is for it to be coming out. And in the meantime, in addition to Michaela, what resources folks can turn to in order to keep learning about Italian Jewish and specifically Roman Jewish food.
For sure. So my most recent book, the Jewish Cookbook, which came out in 2019, does have 5 or 6 Roman Jewish recipes. So if you absolutely need a few things, this is the one to get right now. And I always say, when I do cooking demos in person, I can obviously be there for, you can bring me a book that you've bought, or you can buy it there and I'll sign it for you, or make it out to whoever. So what I always say when I do these virtual demos is that I'm very easy to find online. myname.com is my website, and it has my email on it. So you can email me and I will happily sign a book plate for you, which is really just a mailing label, but I will sign a book plate for you and I will mail it to you. And so you can personalize a book if you purchase one that way. So that's just like a Zoom era thing that I like to do. The book, my book, Roman Jewish book, will be out, I think, not till 2023. It's going to be a little while because my manuscript is due the beginning of next year. So it'll take probably another year. So when it's out, I'll come back and I'll do another event. But in the meantime, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram, and, you know, kind of follow the progress there. I kind of put pictures and stuff of what I'm developing. Michaela is an amazing resource, as I mentioned before. There's also a book that came out about 30 years ago by Joyce Goldstein called Cucina Ebraica, which is a larger Italian Jewish book that has food from across Italy. The recipes are a little bit not dated, but it's from 30 years ago, so they're not necessarily how we like to cook today. But in terms of the history, it's a really wonderful book to check out. Oh, and also, if you don't know Etta Servi-Macklin, she passed away recently, but she was from a town called Petigliano, which used to have a very vibrant Jewish community that's basically non-existent anymore. But she wrote 2 or 3 books about kind of her experience with Italian Jewish food from Petigliano. So that is definitely, her books are kind of hard to find at this point. They're like a little, you have to, you know, kind of get lucky to get an older copy and find one, but if you can get your hands on one, they're incredible. Her stories and her history and all of that.
Wonderful. Does that feel like a good place to close, or do you have anything else, Leah, that you wanted to add?
No, this has been super fun, and I'm just always grateful to YIVO for all the kind of thoughtful and really just exciting content that you do both online and in person. So I'm looking forward to getting to, you know, do more with you guys in the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Leah, for joining us. And thank you to all of you, over 500 people joining us today on Zoom and also watching live on YouTube. If you found today's event interesting, I hope that you come to future YIVO events and perhaps consider supporting YIVO. And for free, you can register for our class, A Seat at the Table, A Journey into Jewish Food, which features Leah.
Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to say. I apologize for the self-promotion for a second, but I recently started a newsletter called The Jewish Table, which is not only Rome focused, it's global Jewish food recipes, and it's, you know, weekly if you pay and monthly if you don't pay, but everyone's welcome. So if you want to look up The Jewish Table on Substack, I'm always, you know, I'm putting out new recipes and ideas every week. So feel free to join me there as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and for sharing a wonderful recipe with all of us. I hope everyone who has made the recipe sees how it tastes. If you want to email yivomail@yivo.cjh.org, you can let us know your thoughts and we can connect you to Leah with any further questions. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.